Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or wherever you might be on this planet. I'm Stefanie Valentic with Resource Recycling, and I'm thrilled to be moderating this panel discussion on textile circularity today, hosted by the National Stewardship Action Council and the Stewardship Action Foundation. We've brought together an incredible panel of experts from the textile recovery value chain, from solid waste management to policy to nonprofit reuse and collection, to talk about the question, how do we close the loop on textiles? Right now, textiles represents one of the fastest growing waste streams, yet the infrastructure, the policy frameworks, collaborative models need to recover and reuse these materials are still taking shape, are still evolving, a lot of different factors going into play here. So we're going to dig into what's working, what's not working, and what needs to happen next. So this is designed to be a fast-paced, audience-driven conversation. Please feel free to submit your questions in the comments today. We'll pull from those and we'll hopefully get your question answered today. But before we dive in, I'd like each panelist today to introduce themselves and give a little bit about themselves and what is the most important issue in textile circularity today. So let's see here. Let's start with Jake. Jake, if you'd like to start by introducing yourself and we can kind of pass it along here.
Sure. My name is Jake Slayton. I'm the president and CEO of Goodwill, the agency based in Bakersfield, but I also represent the Association of California Goodwills, which has been working on 707. The most important thing in textile that we're really looking at is really the infrastructure. There's part of this that goes through the salvage markets and because of how much is being produced, especially in this day and age. And in the United States, building out infrastructure is incredibly important to us to make sure this is sustainable going forward. So that's really our focus these days.
Amy, from SWANA, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Lestition Burke, and I'm the CEO of SWANA. Our mission is to advance waste as a resource. So we bring together public and private sectors to move waste as a resource through education, advocacy, and research. And so when we talk about a resource, that could mean compressed natural gas, putting energy on the grid, powering homes, and of course, recycling, reuse and refill, finding new purposes for our materials, and that includes textile recycling. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Heidi, from the National Stewardship Action Council and the Stewardship Action Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for doing this, and thanks for our panelists for being here. I've been working in this field now for 35 years, all based out of Sacramento, but I'm from the Midwest and the East Coast, and I just hate litter. And even as a child, I was picking it up in the park. So my passion is to reduce waste and treat it as a resource that it is. And advance the circular economy. And that's why I've worked as a consultant, a regulator at Cal Recycle. I was advisor to the chair for years, where we actually got producer responsibility into the strategic plan. And then went out and became a consultant and started the California Product Stewardship Council. And while I was there, I actually saw textiles coming as a problem and decided to hire a person who came out of the textile industry and start that whole thing. That's Dr. Joanne Brash. And now, they passed SB 707 in California. And now we're starting a national working group on this textile issue because as it goes in California, other states are looking at this. So we're very excited to have the panel here, and I'm thrilled to be part of the discussion. Thank you for hosting us.
Well, thank you. Fred, you're up next.
Thank you for hosting this event. Great to be here. So my name is Fred Olsson. I'm the CEO of Planet Aid. I've been working with textiles for about 45 years, recycling of textiles, the reuse of textiles, specifically to fund international development and work in Africa, Latin America, and so on. And I'm coming from the textile background as a fundraising vehicle for those projects we run overseas. And the recycling and reuse and reduce of textiles going forward has come in later years. And it's a very interesting aspect of what we do, how we can get more out of it, because we do reuse way too little of it. So I'm here to talk about that from this perspective. Thank you.
Maya?
Hi, everyone. I'm Maya Keyzers. I'm from the Washington State Department of Ecology in the Solid Waste Program in a unique group called the Recycling Market Development Center. And we were just created in 2019 by the legislature, so I definitely feel like the new kid on the block here. But our mission is to help create a circular economy in Washington State. And one of the materials we focus on is textiles, because we saw from our waste characterization study from the 2021 last one we did that 4% of our waste stream is textiles. So that puts it in the top 10 material types in our disposal system. So that's a high priority to try and solve. And we also have an innovative Next Cycle Washington Accelerator program, and we've met a lot of small businesses that have come through that program that are trying to create businesses that address that problem in innovative ways. So from the state government perspective, it's pretty interesting to have that higher perspective and meet all of the different players in the sector and try and fit everybody's skills and the things they know into the broader picture so that we can make a change that works for everybody. So I love talking about this, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. And last but not least, Sonya. Are you here with us? All right, she might be joining us a little bit later here. Before we dive into the conversation, I'd like to hear from each of you. What is the biggest challenge for textile circularity in 2026? Just a quick thought from each of you. Amy, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest challenge for us, especially in the municipal solid waste side, is that the local government's on the front lines of this challenge. And so we really need to get this going right with the right mix of policy, infrastructure, and partnerships. And I think if we can start this with that right bridge, we can turn textiles from this growing liability into this circular resource. And we can fund the collection and sorting. We can protect workers. The safety is so important to SWANA, and I know all of you, we want to bring people home at the end of the day. And of course, building those domestic end markets is really important.
Maya, would you like to share next?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely resonate with everything that Amy said. And I think about end markets a lot, for my job. And I definitely think that there needs to be more value put on the reuse part of the system. Like, we can't control how much comes into our state, but once that material is here, we have to figure out what to do with it besides just diverting it into a landfill. And so that connection between that being seen as a resource and how to make that possible for like the small batch vendor to have that material, but not have the whole onus be on them to collect it, sort it, deconstruct it if needed, and turn it into a new product, and then also have the buyer to buy that product. So communication and continuing to work on solving that problem, because that's really what we're going to need to make it profitable and scalable. That's what I'm thinking about.
Awesome. And Jake, what is Goodwill thinking about in terms of textiles?
So we're kind of in a unique position because when we're talking about reuse, which is obviously probably the highest priority here, 70% of what gets donated to a Goodwill gets back into reuse almost immediately, and a lot of times in the same footprint at which it's donated in the store. So that 30% is really what we're really focused on, and that's why we're excited about some of the things that are happening right now in terms of, hey, how do we move forward with getting that 30% and moving it into a better in market? It's part of our business that's a necessary part of our business, but not one that we don't necessarily love, because there's a lot of costs associated with that, and there's not a lot of economics associated with that. So it's really, I think the infrastructure is in place. I think it starts with maybe educating the consumer a little bit better about the whole process these clothes go through, and then building out that recycling infrastructure at the end of the day, so we have a better end market for these things and a more stable end market for textiles.
Fred, what is Planet 8 seeing?
Well, first in the order of business, I cannot hear Jake at all. And maybe others cannot hear him either.
I could hear him fine.
Yeah.
Okay. I hear everybody else but Jake.
Sorry.
For us, it's very important that we have a coherent legislative agenda across the country, that rather than every state having their own way of doing legislative around textiles. There's so many local laws already on the books for this, so we need to have a conversation about how we do it nationally and do it the same way. And there are many good examples already going that we can use. I also agree with Amy, we need to keep the markets open. Most of what we collect and reuse is actually exported to Central and South America. And those markets need the goods. About 65% of the global population on this earth need access to used clothing for economic reasons. So recycling all the textiles in the US will take that goods out of the market in poorer countries. So we need to keep that market open for that purpose. It's also a important part of the reuse is to find really good ways of recycling the end-of-life textiles. Because while we can reuse a lot of it many times, there will come a time when the fibers cannot be reused anymore as garments. So I think a good recycling program is very necessary as well.
And Heidi, what do you feel is the biggest challenge, the biggest topic going into 2026 that's impacting the textile market?
Well, what's impacting the textile market is one thing, but I mean, I guess what I'd like to talk about is we've got infrastructure from Goodwill's, Planet Aids, and others that I'm very concerned about protecting. As legislation rolls out and producers have a primary role in figuring out how to manage those end-of-life products, my goal is to make sure that we are completely honoring the hard work that's been done for over 100 years, I know, with Goodwill, and I think over 30 years with Planet Aid, to be the collection system and the recycling system, and to support them to do reuse first, because they have not had the resources to do repair. And I believe the producers have a, in my opinion, a mandate to do source reduction first, which is to take, those clothes that can be repaired and get them support to repair them in the United States and put them back out for reuse here. Now, what can't be done here, obviously, there's a great need for them in other parts of the world, as it was said. But that to me is a real concern, and something I want to make sure this doesn't just become a recycling system, that this is really prioritizing and utilizing the most cost-effective infrastructure, which is what's already there. So that's my biggest concern.
And Sonya, have you been able to join us?
I am here. Sorry about that.
Awesome. Oh, no, it's okay. It's technology. So but we're here, we're live, we're ready to go. Can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and let us know what you feel is the biggest challenge going into 2026?
Oh, golly. Well, my name is Sonya, and I currently work with SCS engineers. And I have sort of a unique outlook. I'm in that whole zero waste and circular systems. Like, that's the world I come from. And what I see in 2026 is a lot of desire for the reuse and just to follow up with everybody else has mentioned, it's the infrastructure. And we have to lean on that private industry. And really, I think I just have done a waste sort in Minnesota. And what I'm seeing is maybe the community needs a better education on where to put the materials and how to do it inexpensively. And so I'm seeing a lot of education needed and a lot of desire within the public. And just a quick note, as we're talking about this, just one quick note is the textile EPR really, if you think about it, it's now we're moving beyond the theoretical and into the inevitable. And the real question is getting the producers to design some changes in that makes that follow through and the end of life more feasible.
Thank you so much. So let's set the stage a little bit. Why textile circularity? Why now? Heidi, you can. I know you're going to do a really great job doing this. Can you kind of start, and maybe if anybody else wants to hop in, frame the national conversation around textile circularity? Why? What's behind the growing focus on it right now?
Well, I could see it coming a while ago because the waste characterization studies in California were showing such large volumes of textiles that were ending up in the waste stream. And the first one I ever worked on was on carpet back in 2009. We passed the bill in 2010. It wasn't my bill. It was a bill by one of the legislators. It was an author-sponsored bill, but I weighed in on it heavily with others. Didn't win all the battles, and we ended up having to go back and fix it 3 times already. But it was my first round with textiles, as carpet is basically mostly plastic now. It's wool and plastic. So I started learning about the issues with textiles and how they're made and where they go and so forth. And it's a problem from top to bottom. And I know that you've probably all heard of Interface Carpet, and they were really working on source reduction and carbon reduction in the industry through design changes, like making the carpet in tiles so that you could only replace a certain walkway area and not have to replace the entire carpet wall to wall, and things like that were really impactful. And when I started seeing the large volume of textiles in the waste characterization studies in California, I thought, uh-oh, this is coming. There's going to be a day when we've got these diversion mandates and, goals of hitting 70% recycling rate, which, by the way, we failed by over 20% in California to hit. And that's the next big thing after packaging. So we knew, and organics, and we knew it was coming, which is why I got involved in it many years ago, started talking at the textile exchanges and so forth. And it was becoming clear to me that the textile industry was realizing they had a problem, and they were already starting to work on it and getting their organic, cotton to be organic because of all the pesticides and just the whole realm of sustainability. But that they were just starting on that journey. So I'm excited about doing the working group because I really feel that there was a need for a national facilitated conversation amongst the broad group of stakeholders. This is just very much like packaging. It's an enormous group that has to be brought together. If you're going to pass what I call if you're in a relay race, you're passing a baton. But when we're in a circular system, we're passing now textiles. And it's like textile from here to here to here to here to here to here. All these people, all these groups in the system have to be talking or else and understanding what the next group is going to pass to them in order for them to know how to handle it and how to cost effectively manage it. The whole system has to work together. That means the conversation has to happen with everybody there. Everybody at the table, nobody on the menu is what my goal is. So the National Working Group is really setting up to say, there's carpet, that's a textile. There's fashion, that's a textile. There's other textiles as well. But we're going to talk about all of them and then the different laws and the different perspectives and the different issues. Because if you go into lobby a bill and you only know your little piece of it, but there's a whole lot more to know. You're going to say things like, I want this, and this is what my industry wants. Well, that's great, but that might right head on into somebody else's situation. And if you both know the situations, maybe you can come out with a better solution for both. That makes the system work better. So we're very excited about this, but really it's what's going into the landfill. You can see in Tennessee, they're talking about a packaging EPR bill because they have a landfill expansion project that's so unwelcome by the public that they're literally talking about packaging EPR in a deep red state like Tennessee. And so I believe textiles and everything else are going to be brought up in other states because nobody wants a landfill or an incinerator near them. And it's a large volume.
And that's a very powerful context. And speaking of landfills, Amy, from your perspective at SWANA, what are you hearing from solid waste leaders about, what's about managing textiles? What's the reality on the ground for haulers?
Yeah, so we represent North America. So in both the United States and Canada, waste leaders are telling me the same thing, right? That the textiles are surging in the municipal waste stream. And that's raising like operational costs and of course, risks to the workers, right? Especially when people think that they can recycle their jeans. Actually, one of my team members' roommates put their jeans in the blue bin thinking that they could recycle their jeans in a curbside program, certainly not designed for that. If fabrics, textiles reaches MRFs, material recovery facilities, those fabrics can tangle up equipment, they can elevate contamination, and certainly that can strain budgets for these facilities running that. And this data is a little old, but according to the EPA, based on 2018 data, that the US generated 17 million tons of textile municipal solid waste. So based on, who are members, that's who we're picking up the trash and recycling. 11.3 million tons were landfilled out of that 17 million. So just think about that for a second. There's a lot that we could do there to match the scale of solutions to the scale of the problem, right? And it really hit home to me, actually, Jake, when I was out in California. I visited a Goodwill facility in Orange County, a Santa Ana facility in August, and I was just blown away. This facility processes over 1 million donations annually. So think about that being as like one car or person bringing in materials. And they bale 50 bales of textiles per day. Yeah. And I mean, I was astonished standing with the bales of textiles.
Just so you know, too, that's a universal reaction. Is we usually go back there, people see the wall of bales.
Yes.
And then we say, that's about 3 days worth of product that you're looking at.
Yes, Jake. I wish you had been there to see my face. I'll have to share the pictures with you.
I've seen your face on a million faces.
I think we need like education for all to see that because of just the amount of material, right? It just really put it in perspective for me. And I was so happy to share in this, conversation today because of the impact that tour had on me, right? And how much more we need to do.
Yeah. And we're open to anybody in the space that wants to have those conversations or see that.
Love it.
And we have Goodwills all the way from the Oregon-California border, literally down to the border with San Diego. So wherever you're at, we'd be able to
love it.
Anybody who wants that information.
I myself do shop, and I got to live and breathe what I want others to do, right, as CEO. So I do shop at a Goodwill. I have one a mile from my house, and I also use some others like ThreadUp and some other ones online as well. And I just think it's really important. I think California is a great step. I'm glad the implementation starting a month away in 26 with that, and some other states are looking into it. But in terms of what the municipal solid waste side needs, certainly this public-private collaboration is always great because that helps with the funds collections, the sorting. It helps us protect workers with that. And it can help us set up like the convenience, right? Like that's what people want. They want it to be convenient. If we can't get to the curbside first out of the gate and we need to do it at collection sites, let's make that as easy as possible. Let's make as many as possible. Let's increase, if we can, reuse the repair, all of that. And that's why SWANA is really trying to take an active approach on educating on potential solutions. We do have our own EPR guiding principles, and they do advocate what's aligned with what I mentioned and what we've mentioned: safety, infrastructure, and education of the consumer. And it's these pieces that we really need for communities to make sure that textile recovery will work on the ground. And so that is something that we will be pushing going forward.
And if I might add, safety is top of mind for all of us in the industry. We've got fires everywhere from lithium-ion batteries. I was at a party last night for a chamber event, and this woman with a light-up sweater was there. And I immediately think about, if we're going to be collecting all these textiles to have batteries somewhere in there, what have we done? What have we done here? We're going to have fires everywhere. I just talked to also last night a gentleman with Republic Services, and he could literally watch from his phone as their facility, after being literally down for 18 hours because they were just idle during the weekend, a fire just started spontaneously, and they could see it, and they had a fire rover that pointed and shot it and put it out before our fire department even got there. But this is very serious. I mean, we need to get batteries out of textiles before we end up with burning down Goodwills in our Planet Aid facilities and everything else. So that's one of the things I wanted to bring up. And I think somebody had a question about my comments about how do you get everybody to the table, that they're not all talking.
We love that question, don't we, Heidi?
We love that question because I'm sorry to say that we have gone to industries before and said, you've got a problem and we need to solve it. And they'll say, basically talk to the hand until you pass a bill, and they'll try to kill the bill until they can't. And then once the bill passes, they go, we don't like it. And we're like, yep, you don't. We did our best because we weren't you and we couldn't advocate on your behalf. But now that you're there, let's try to let's make sense of all this. And we're going to see in California how this all plays out, but that has brought people together, right? Because now they all have to talk. And that's why we're doing this national working group, because everybody needs to talk. That's the only way this is going to work. And the bills and the regulations that implement the bills are helpful and useful. That's exactly why we're doing it. We're not lobbying. This is not a lobbying group. This is an information sharing group. And we're going to have presentations and information on bills, on new programs, new technologies, everything, so that we can get everybody on the same page. And everybody's welcome.
So I have can I have some comments to that?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So thank you for whoever brought up the tonnage that's actually being discarded in this country. 11.3 million tons ending up in the landfill. And us working in this industry, we have a key number we usually refer to, and that is 15% of the consumed textiles are being collected and reused or recycled, or something like that. 85% ends up in the landfill. That number has not moved other than to worse over the last few years because of the fast fashion industry. And it's important to note that there is a huge industry already collecting and reusing and remaking textiles, even though it's only 15% of the total, and it's much more needed. There is a big industry, a big export industry too. Used textiles, I believe, is one of the sixth or the seventh largest export volumes out of this country, not in dollars, but in volume. So it's important to continue that. And this working group will be very important to further this conversation and bring everybody to the table. There will be many, many conferences going forward with this. And we just need to remember that we have some players here that have been doing this for a long time. And we need to ask ourselves, how can we scale our part of this? And I like to refer to our work in Massachusetts, where we started in 1997. Massachusetts made a ban on textile in the waste in 2022. A ban, not an EPR bill, but a ban.
Or a disposal ban, not a sales ban. Yeah.
Yeah, not a sales ban, but ban to throw textile in the waste. and we've been working with the state now for a couple of years to find solutions, because of course a lot of the textiles still end up in the waste, and that's why we need a recycling program as well, so the end of life textiles can be refabricated or reused, because organizations like Planet Aid, and I assume Goodwill as well, are seeing quality issues with the donations coming in that cannot be passed on to consumers in retail stores, for example. So there's another program that need to be in place, and there need to be money in place for making that possible for organizations too. And we do need to keep the market open both for domestic and international sales of textiles that have been used before.
Yeah, I would just like to comment on that real quick, because I mentioned earlier 70% of what you donate to a Goodwill. 70% of what you donate to a Goodwill gets back into reuse really, really quickly. That 30% that's left it means it had several times to find a buyer, and it didn't. So after you get through a Goodwill thrift store, you know how much value is really in that. It's not a whole lot. It's generally the fast fashion you see, stuff that's only meant to be worn 7 or 8 times, and then so having a recycling infrastructure when it's that close to the end of life would be fantastic, because right now it's going out that salvage market in that form, and I don't know how much value it has now. It's being passed around, which is, I think, something none of us really love.
Jake and Fred, you brought up some great points. I would, it's really interesting to hear, what's going on, the conversations that are happening. This actually came in from the audience previously. I'd also like to learn what will happen to the waste from textiles not able to be recycled. What are the KPIs that are focused on, that are being focused on, and what are the plans for collection and sorting labor with those types of textiles?
Let me make sure I understand the question. This is for the 30% that doesn't have a buyer, or is this things that get farther down the road that truly can't be recycled?
It says, what will happen to waste from textiles not able to be recycled?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I wouldn't know that.
You mean with a new program, like with a new EPR program, or?
Yes, I believe this was an audience question that came in, so that's about all the information I have.
Because our hope is, as this technology gets going and it gets implemented, that question solves itself. That there are recyclers that continue to do that, and so what gets ultimately in the waste is very small. That would be our hope, and that's why one of the reasons we have hopes for this program.
Well, and I want to address that question, and some of the others in the chat, is that if you want to turn off the spigot, you've got to get the producers to have to pay for the end of life, and they're going to think about design and the materials they're using and so forth. There are a lot of textiles now are multi-materials, right? They've got spandex and cotton and this and that and the other. You can't just separate them. It's not one thing. Mm-hmm. So the problem we have now is, how can you salvage different fibers from the same textile? And this is where the big conversation comes in about what is chemical recycling, or what is, and of course we know there's different types of processes. Some have emissions and concerns, and some may not. There's still a huge universe of discovery going on, and a lot of research going on. In fact, when we did a study trip up to Canada this last year with the California Foundation for the Environment and Economy, we went to Lululemon as one of the places, but we also went to a place called 6-1 that's working on actually dissolving the polyester off of the spandex elastin so that the elastin could be reused. So there's new technologies that are coming, and as bills pass on textiles, there's regulatory pressure to figure this out, right? So, and the producers are going to have to do eco-modulation, and eco-modulation should, if structured correctly, not necessarily how the carpet industry has done it in the past, but hopefully we can get that corrected. It will drive a lot of change, where you're going to pay a lot more to sell that item into the market than your competitors who have done a better job on design and ensuring that the material has an end of life. And so I do want to highlight, too, on our website, we've got a new case study out, and this is where policy meets reality. Bentley Mills is a carpet company out of Southern California, and they have, we put into law the new updated correction carpet stewardship law that we had to get 5% recycled content, not recycled pop bottles into carpet, but carpet to carpet. And they were able to get that achieved, which is very difficult, took a lot of R&D, and it's expensive, right? So that's why we want a fair and level playing field for the companies that lead and actually invest in the source reduction and market driving activities like recycled content. They're going to get a benefit, but I just wanted to do a call out for Bentley Mills and thank you for their great work and to highlight, it's on our website, the Circular Innovation with PC4 and Carpet project is there at www.nsaction.us.
And if I may just follow up Heidi really quick, and just a quick comment. If we design EPR well, it's not a waste fee. It's not, it shouldn't be considered a waste fee. It's like an industrial policy that will increase circular manufacturing as well as jobs. As we all know, that reuse sector creates 1,000 jobs per ton versus 1 job per ton in the traditional waste industry. So we have opportunities beyond just the textiles. We have opportunities to help people too.
But if I may say, this is a global phenomenon.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
Used textiles are produced by about 1.5 to 2 billion people. It's North America, it's Europe, it's Australia, it's Japan, South Korea, and pockets around the world. It's about 2 million people are able to produce this used clothing. And another 6 billion people need access to clothing. So what happens if we make too stringent laws in the US and regulate fast fashion very hard, is that they will just go to the other countries and sell their products. And that is what's happening already in South and Central America, in Africa. Cheap Chinese clothing ends up in those countries, which has a polluting effect that we are trying to get rid of here by regulating it. So we're just passing the problem to other countries. And therefore, this has to be done very, very carefully from our side and look at history of textiles and how it has been shipped around the world, the export of it and the effect of it, and job creation is not only here, it's also in the countries where those garments are going to. So we need to achieve some kind of reduce of textile manufacturing and use textiles longer. And that's the way we can keep pollution in check. But we need to think globally about this, not only for California or for the US, but for everybody.
So Fred, you bring up a good point. So how, there's a number of different websites such as Temu, different companies coming out that, really kind of flood the consumer markets with cheap, fast fashion, throwaway textiles. What needs to be done? I guess, roping it into policy or regulation or anything else what needs to happen to kind of stop, this massive influx of cheap materials that are coming in and, and eventually materials that aren't great for, the secondhand market.
Well, I can say for my part, for our part here, education, a lot of education for all the consumers and ability. I mean, we do need the recycling industry of these garments as well at the end of life of them. But we also need to regulate how this is done in the country so we don't get too much of that into our consumer pockets. But if we don't take it, then they will go to other countries as well. So I don't know. I kind of think that the working group has a job to cut out for itself to discuss this.
And to the point of fast fashion, we've spoken, it's about 7 to 10 wears per purchase. Higher end, higher quality, I won't say higher end, but higher quality, we can reach up to 100 wears per purchase. Maybe the key is educating the public about that in fast fashion financial aspects in 7 to 10 wears versus a pair of jeans in the United States lasts an average of 8 years and about 4 cents a wear. So
Right. That's
there's
point.
a fine line between quality, cost, and craftsmanship, if you will.
Right, absolutely.
So we're really thinking about the rethink, the redesign, and from a manufacturing standpoint, what do producers need to do to reduce the use of mixed materials that are being used in textile or in clothing and other garments and other material and other items. Heidi, what do you think needs to be done from an EPR standpoint to kind of set expectations for what producers need to do?
Well, the key with producer responsibilities, first you put them solely in charge of this, because that's where our costs come from. It's how durable is it? Is it repairable? And can we do anything with it? Is there a market for it at end of life? And so now they have to care about all this. They don't have to just care about shareholder profits. They have to actually care about the planet and people and the back end of this.
Right.
And by doing that and having that cost embedded in their business, they now have a real financial reason to the shareholders to say this expense line item is going to be higher if I can't, I'm going to do this, this, and this to get it down. The recycling system and the payment that they're going to make, which is why eco-modulation fees and how they're set up is so incredibly important, and how quickly they're imposed on the producers, because the faster they get that financial signal to reduce those end-of-life costs, they get extremely creative. Now, unfortunately, until that time, marketing departments determine, often what things look like or what color they are, and sometimes those colors might be toxic, or, they not make it harder to recycle or whatever. But now they're going to have to think about all that. So to me, if extended producer responsibility is set up correctly, it's not just a cost per ton. It's a cost per ton by the impacts of that design and material that will give a direct financial feedback back to the producer to either do more of that or do less of that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sonya, what are you seeing from a state perspective?
Well, I mean, from a state perspective, like I said, it is a big part of our waste stream, and we want to address that. And I mean, we're really lucky in Washington State that, as me and Megan Davis, my colleague that work on this, we've discovered that Washington is really rich with academic researchers. We have an innovative recycle here, Ravel, who has a recycling system, advanced recycling, that isn't harmful to the environment, that and then we have Looped Works, which is in Portland. So we're really fortunate that we have a lot of people here, community-based change makers that are doing that education and outreach, that they've been on the scene for years, doing this grassroots work, having the repair workshops and the clothing swaps. And, I know from what I've heard from them is they are done talking about it. They want to see action. They've been talking about it for years. And it's like, when you host a clothing swap, you will always end up with more material than what you started with. It's just, there's more material than we know what to do with. They could stop producing materials and we'd all have clothes for a long time. So there's room for solutions in all the different directions. So it's like more of those conversations. And like in the Pacific Northwest, we have a lot of the outdoor brands, and, they're really, a lot of the brands have been focused on greenhouse gas emissions. And that's when they talk about sustainability, that's really what's on the top of their mind. And so they've been making like great strides, especially with the low hanging fruit of addressing those things. But now we need to bring their focus over to this like end of life part of it too, because I agree with Heidi. They can come up with some really creative solutions around that. So I want to keep convening people and having conversations. I think this national group will be so helpful for that. We've been doing it on a state level. And even with a state, you find people that have no idea there's this other person that does something very similar. And if they united, they could really leverage their work and their point of view and like the support they're looking for. So I think that, we should all do that locally and nationally as well.
So one of the themes I'm hearing then is that, no single sector can solve this alone. Everybody needs to have these conversations, attend these working groups, find these solutions. So I guess my question to the full panel is, how can industry, government, nonprofits better align their goals and investments to create these equitable, scalable textile recovery systems? Let's see here. Heidi, if you'd like to start.
Sure. That's why we're doing the working group, because I truly believe that we're going to get the best outcomes when everybody's talking and trying to figure out how to do their bit the most cost effectively and make sure that it makes sense for the rest of the system. And it starts all of it with the producer and the design and what they put on the market. Everything else falls from there. So we are excited that we now have producers talking to the waste haulers. We've done that with packaging. We already see that I know, Amy, you've been to a lot of facilities recently, and the producers, I would just moderated a panel at the SWANA conference. I was honored to do it with the Circular Action Alliance leadership. And we talked about the need to go to facilities and have producers talking to the back end of the system, seeing it, running their new products possibly through to see, is it going to work? And then we can all go, okay, what's coming at us we know is manageable. And we have the funding and the resources to do it. But now it took, unfortunately, legislation. We were warning, we were sending flags, but here we are, because to me, legislation is the absolute last resort. But if you do it, it does work at bringing people together. And now we're in a good place where everybody's starting to talk. And the textiles, that's exactly what's starting to happen. But it's another giant category. A lot of manufacturers, a lot of different materials. We have everything from, carpet to tents to, it's not just clothing. And so, but they all kind of come, a lot of them from the same sorts of materials. So a lot of conversations to have, but the sooner we have them, the better. That's the only way this is going to work. And hopefully, we can come up with a model legislation that a variety of stakeholders can agree on. So in the future, we want harmony. Everybody wants harmony. It makes it easier on everyone. The producers the most, because can you imagine trying to comply with, what they have right now in electronics, I think 24 different states with 24 different rules. That's a nightmare. Bottle bills, 10 states, 10 different rules. They're all sausage machines, every legislature. So if you, even if you go in with a model, it might not come out exactly the same, but your chances are much better if the broad stakeholder groups agrees this is what would work for everybody. And especially when it comes to labeling, because you can't label differently for different states, or it's very, very difficult and costly, and reporting and how you track things. So that's the kind of stuff we have to really agree on for long-term efficiencies in the system.
I was just going to say real quick on what needs to happen. So SB 707 has three kind of components to it. It has like collection, sorting, and the recycling piece. I would say on the first two pieces, the collection and the sorting, actually the infrastructure already kind of exists in a lot of ways. Goodwill, 94% of Californians live within 10 miles of a Goodwill. So if you add in Planet Aid, Salvation Army, Homeboy Industries, any organization you want, and I'm those things kind of exist. And as soon as the quicker the funding is recognized from producers, the quicker they get to that. I can tell you as Goodwill, because even though Goodwill is very active right now in this space on sustainability, Our main mission is workforce development. We're hiring the most vulnerable people in your community and giving them a life. That's our job. So sorting, that sorting function of it, we're chomping at the bit to get to that. We want to go, but we got to have a sustainable source of funding to be able to do that and break these things down. There was a question in the chat about repair and remaking. Part of the thing that we want to see too, in terms of that collection infrastructure already being there, is that we're piloting repair programs in different parts of the country, trying to see, because obviously if you're paying somebody in California with all the different labor stuff we have, a pretty expensive wage to do that, you can't turn around and pay somebody $20 an hour and then produce a $7 garment right now. But if there's bridge funding for that, we'd absolutely do that. Then you can educate the public, because a lot of what ends up in that waste stream is people go, it's missing a button, it's got a small tear. So they don't want to donate it, which they should, but they don't want to. So we can cut out a lot of it right there, as long as that sorting funding is there. We can go, I think, actually pretty fast. And I would hope producers look at it that way, that it's not a threat to them, really, that it's right there. And then the other part of it too is, I would hope people would get to this before solid waste property taxes and all the things associated with that go up, because that's a really regressive tax. Just in my county alone, there was a sewage. I know it's not the same, but the county said we need to, I think, double the rate, or 30% increase or whatever it is, and the community freaked out. And that's what I think we're racing against here, is that property taxes to address all these issues, because it's not a 100% wool garment that was produced 100 years ago. It's got 85 different things in it. So we can either do this and get ahead of it, or we can have a lot of angry citizens in the next 10 years. And so I think it behooves us all to get together. Goodwill, we bridge that private and public deal. We deal in mission services, and we deal with the business logistics of doing everything. So we're very excited to engage with anybody at any time about anything regarding this, because we think it can be for good, and I think it can be really doable. We just got to look at it as that it can be.
If I may ask, there was a photo of Textile Mountain, as I would call it, that was recently put up during this live here. And that's a photo of a waste sort that I did in Minnesota. And that textile waste was from one sample, a 250-pound sample that we took from that waste load. And that is the amount of textiles we found in that. Mm-hmm. So just an impactful, we've got a lot of work to do, and textiles are a huge piece of that missing piece of that circularity puzzle that we have to solve. And I highly recommend, if anybody has an opportunity to share waste sorts, especially in that textile industry, to get folks on the ground, because when you're there, it's very impactful.
All right. So we have a few minutes left here. We're kind of coming down to our time, but I have this question here from that's in the comments. It seems there are information, behavior management, and capability gaps that are barriers to making progress. Is there an effort to build a science-based consensus drive roadmap?
I haven't heard of anyone actually doing that, but again, that's the kind of issues that I'm sure will come up during our working group. In our packaging working group, which we focus just on SB 54 in California, but it's now expanding next year to all states, because we've got now all these other states with these bills, and those regs will hopefully be done soon. We're going to actually talk about, from the group that joins us, what topics they want to talk about, because some things are bubbling up as more higher priority than others. I know the companies are doing a lot of research on their own, very quietly, trying to figure this stuff out. And they make it, because some of it's proprietary. If they can figure something else out, they're not going to necessarily share it with their competitors. But, as a whole, as the industry has to start solving these things, and they have to sit in a room and talk about how to develop the system and get the costs down, because that's what everybody wants, then you're going to start to see things bubbling up. But I can tell you, the companies we've talked to, they're already well underway working on this stuff. And so that's thrilling. That's the goal of the movement. And now it's just making sure that everything works together And one thing I will say too is I just want to be cautious that we don't have any too much vertical control of anything. Local governments are responsible for public health and safety in the garbage system. When you put a group of manufacturers in control of a very large portion of a waste stream, it's really important there are guardrails, and it's not a monopoly. It's not a government sanctioned monopoly. We make them nonprofits so that they have to actually serve the public good. But there's also risks in that. And there's now legal challenges in Oregon about this on the packaging. So, a lot more I just throwing that out there is one of those things that have to be discussed amongst all EPR programs. But we have to be careful to not let too many people sit in a room and talk about things that are competitive, out, and it's really for the public good, I guess, is a base thing. And we don't get into a place where costs go up because there's too much control and vertical integration. So that's just a caution in the big picture.
Yeah, I think the EPR laws will be very important to regulate this in the future. And it's also important that the PROs then are also independent, as you're saying, from the issue itself, and not just another way of corner the market, so to speak. So we need to be very careful with how this is done, but it is the way to go forward. And maybe we could have a EPR that's national at some point as well.
I will say about that, we've got 10 bottle bills over 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't been able to even get all the states to adopt it, and we still don't have, and I know one thing for sure, if you go national, every time you step up in government, it gets more influenced by corporate monies and PACs, the way our system is now set up, and some of the court rulings in the last 20 years. So the problem is you'll get a very low bar.
Right.
It's the group that is the least progressive is going to be the one that wins and drags the whole thing down at a national level. So what I always advise is let a couple of states go first slowly. I think packaging went too fast. I think we got 7 states in 3 years. It took 10 years or 50 years to get 10 states for a bottle bill. And now there's threats of, preemption at the federal level, and it's too disharmonized. We can't do it. Well, got to go slowly with textiles. This is a very big category.
Right.
And see how it rolls out and really work things through. Let's not get anybody super upset, and let's try to figure it out together and go slowly. Because as one state like California goes, it's literally the reason this nation follows is we're 12% of the market. We're the largest market. Nobody can ignore it. They're not going to just walk away from California and selling in California. So you will all benefit out there from what happens here. And we'll learn. And then the lessons can be played out in other states over time. And then over time, if the industry wants national, then, we should all talk about that for sure.
Right,
but that usually is not the highest bar.
Thank you.
Sure.
So very quickly to each of our panelists as we wrap up, now that we've had this conversation, what is one action that could accelerate progress towards U.S. textile circularity in 2026? Heidi, if you just want to get started very quickly here while we wrap up.
One thing that would be the catalyst to expedite this, I really think the conversation between like the SWANAs and the waste industry and the Goodwills, the people and the Planet Aids in the middle, and producers. And the retailers, because they're going to have, but they shouldn't necessarily have to be the collectors either. I don't want to imply that. But the key major players have to talk, and the waste haulers. They have to all be involved in this. Hence the working group.
Sonya, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm just going to have to agree with Heidi in that sense that everybody has to come to the table. We can't make a solution for others. They have to be involved. What works best for them. And that's when we have success.
What about you, Fred?
I think also the same. We have to stick together and do it as a group and have the conversations. And I really agree with Heidi that we should not also, while we want to expedite it, we should not do it too fast. We have to find real solutions that actually work, because it is an increasing problem. When I first started Planet Aid in 1997, people consumed about 72 pounds of textile a year. That is now up to, I believe, over 104 pounds per year, or even more. So it's an increasing issue. We need to expedite it, but very carefully.
Jake?
Join a working group. Maybe this one. So, yeah, join a working group and come with it, knowing that this can work. And it's just going to be a kind of it's an incredibly industrial. The thing is, there's so many clothes. I stress it's an incredibly industrial process. It's not just a paper process. It's an industrial process. So it's going to take a while. Things need to be built. So it's going to take a while, but join a working group.
Amy or Maya, if you want to just go ahead.
Yeah, I love representing the waste and resource management industry, because whatever comes our way, we just take it and deal with it. And part of that is going to be making sure that we're educating these individuals so that they can go to the legislators, the regulators, and the communities to say that this is important. And that we need the infrastructure built for it. We need it to be part of budgets so that we can have the drop-off programs. We can have maybe curbside textile collection through partnerships with nonprofits and other recyclers with that. And so we need to make sure that leadership is strong within cities and counties and towns, municipalities, to stand up this collection and sorting and integrate all of that. And of course, to continually educating residents. That's like the behavior change is really key within all of that. So we need to do the big things, but at the same time, we need to run this in parallel and keep that going.
For the sake of time, I'm just going to say that I agree with what everyone said. And I just always want to advocate to continue to include even the smaller players, those community repair and fixers, and the innovators that are the ones on the front line creating the new technology we need. They need to be included and supported too. Thank you.
I do want to quickly respond to Michael Wagner's comment about going slow is not good. I was talking about legislation. We've already got the big state with the big bill. But I'm not saying I recommend every state just go boom, 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 passing this until we learn some lessons. And we're going to it's bumpy as you implement a big bill like this. That's all I'm saying. But we should definitely be working on pilots and doing a bunch of partnership work, which is part of the working group work. So I hope you can all join the working group. It starts December 15th from 11 to 12 Pacific time. And if you don't know how to join us, just go to the website, www.nsaction.us. And I think we're out of time.
Yes, and thank you all for such a rich, important conversation. I know I'm taking away a lot, and I hope everybody in the audience did as well. Before we close, I do also want to mention that Resource Recycling will be hosting our Textile Recovery Summit coming up February 23rd to 25th at the Gaylord San Diego. Hopefully, we'll be able to continue these conversations there. But with that said, I'd like to thank our panelists today. I'd like to thank the National Stewardship Action Council and the Stewardship Action Foundation for hosting this wonderful event. Please feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions about what's going on in this textile space. We would love to hear your thoughts as well. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.